Thumbs up. All right. So in this talk, hold a sec, we're going to talk about breaking down ransomware attacks. So we're just going to kind of talk in general about ransomware attacks. So what's on the agenda? We're going to talk about why this talk. What is a ransomware attack? What is a ransomware attack? Why is a ransomware attack so effective and prevalent? How do attackers get in and install ransomware? How to avoid ransomware, questions, and we're not going to do news because I did not update my slides. So why this talk? It's a bit of a hot topic right now. Ransomware is all over the place. I think the Colonial Pipeline in May really highlighted that. Kaseya did not help. In our other news section, we were talking a lot about a bunch of different ransomware stuff, right? So it's something that is in the news on a regular basis at this point. Part of that too is the news is going to try to look for stuff that's going to get people to click and pay attention. So you know, this is a pretty much a hot topic at this point. According to Checkpoint Research, there's been a 93% growth year over year in ransomware. And in 2021, we've seen a 41% growth so far. And if you think US is the only country, it's not. 62% of that is in Latin America and 59% is in Europe. So they've seen some pretty significant growth within those other countries. And then I think the US comes in third. So what is a ransomware attack? I'm actually going to drop this link because the organizers who put this in the John Oliver stuff and the organizer stuff.
I dropped that in just as.
Apparently I can't copy and paste in presenter form. Can you drop that in chat? Because
Sure.
ultimately, that is this talk. It's exactly this talk. They kind of cover just about everything we cover in this one in about 22 minutes in John Oliver's funny and humorous way. So feel free to go watch that. It's really quite entertaining. So an attack ultimately encrypts all the things, right? And the hacker gets in either via like phishing, unpatched technology, or some other form. We'll kind of talk about that later. They begin a recon of the network. They encrypt all the files at once. They try to find backups, right? This is where having your backups and having good backups offsite or in another area where attackers can't get to is very important, right? And then they usually start the encryption in the middle of the night or on a weekend, and this is largely to avoid detection, right? So because encryption takes some time to actually occur. So while they're encrypting, that can be a bit of a sweats moment for the attackers, right? Because if someone detects it and stops it, you know, that can be the end of their game. So another thing that they'll do, and we're going to kind of take a step back, is prior to encryption, this has been a new tactic since the end of 2019, is they'll actually exfiltrate the data. And then this is to incentivize companies to pay, right? If you're able to restore from backups, then trying to, you know, having your exfiltrated data out there and attackers promising to not release it might be another reason or more incentive for them to pay. And I believe this tactic came about because companies have gotten a lot better at backups. But what's interesting is that there's actually newer research that's come out really more recently that says there's a lot more ransomware gains that are stopping this exfiltration of data. And there's a couple things, right? Is that if they're going to exfiltrate data, they need a site that they can post this on. And so if they post it on that site, that actually opens them up to more opportunities for law enforcement to track them down.
Is it a publicly available site? Like you could research it or discover it?
Correct. And that's the whole point of exfiltrating data, right? Is that we're going to publicly post this so everybody can come to it, come grab it, come download it.
Oh, okay.
Come do that. And so like we're going to get into some of the more business side of stuff, and I'll try to weave some of this stuff in. Like this is a very nuanced topic with a lot of different things. But this is more recent research, is that they're finding, especially this year, is that actually they're not exfiltrating data because, again, that is more indicators that potentially ties it back. You think about it too. If you're going to exfiltrate data out, it has to go somewhere, right? So if you can, that's more, it's more evidence, it's more clues to actually tying people back, tying this data back to some sort of threat actor, which gives law enforcement more opportunities to find these people. So there's actually, this over the next year or two, we might actually see this kind of go away again, because there's upkeep for the publicly available, posting sites, right? And that can lead to more law enforcement trying to figure out some of this stuff. Again, there's more of a footprint in doing this kind of stuff, and ultimately, these guys want to be able to get away with their money and not have law enforcement pretty much on their backs trying to get this stuff back. So it's just more recent, newer research that will start. I'm curious to see if like over the next several months, if this tactic kind of changes. It's kind of based on this current research already started to change. So after they encrypt everything, they demand a ransom. The average ransom paid in 2020, according to the site Unit 42, was $312,000. That was a 171% increase from 2019. It tripled to $840,000 for 2021. Large enterprises paid about $3 million. I think, Jessica, you talked about, when we talked about the Colonial Pipeline stuff, you talked about them getting away with $5 million was kind of a steal, because often companies of that size, that kind of infrastructure, were paying like 25 to 30. The highest ransom was paid in 2019, from 2019 to 2020, was 5 million to 10 million. That highest ransom doubled in 2020 from 15 into between 15 million and 30 million. The highest ransomware paid in 2021 was 50 million. So you can kind of see the increase in ransomware payments. Oh baby, little Nolan's here. So a ransom is usually left in the form of a text file on a desktop. This was a pretty good example. And speaking of, in our news item, the Conti, the Conti ransomware gang. This is one of their notes, which is funny if you read through it. I'm going to let everybody kind of read through it while I take a quick drink here. So you can kind of see they're giving people directions to Google stuff, right? And this kind of talks about some of the giving explicit directions on how to make a payment. And even in this case, they're proving that they have a decrypt file, right? Because there have been ransomware gangs that will say they have a decrypt key and they don't provide it, right? So they're actually providing something that allows them to decrypt two files. And then they talk about going to essentially Tor to download, or it even talks about downloading Tor, like how to do that, and then go to the instructions on how to actually make a payment. And then this is the case where the leaked data, we've downloaded a packet of your internal data and are ready to publish it on the website. And this is where companies get into a bit of a conundrum, right? Did they actually download it? If they were in the environment and able to ransomware everything, you kind of can almost accept that, yeah, they do it. But there's trust issues here, because you're kind of trusting someone that's of an unethical nature to delete the data, and so there's really no true guarantee, right? And we talk about this a lot. We've talked about this a lot within this group, is that anything you post on the internet, it's just gone, right? It's going to be archived somewhere. It can be found somewhere. Do you really trust someone that has said that they've exfiltrated your data, that they're gonna actually not do anything with it? Like, how do you actually assure that something's deleted? There's no really way to assure that something's been deleted and hasn't been copied multiple times for them to come back and actually post the data. And this is where maybe you know, a lot of companies are paying for the actual getting files decrypted, but they're also not really paying for the exfiltrated data point, because they're kind of just accepting it's a breach. They're going to make the news. It's out there. I mean, ultimately, there's not really much they can do about it. So why even pay to keep people quiet? And there have been times where we've seen where companies have tried to keep things hush hush, and they still end up in the news. So it's almost like a exfiltrating data is a lose-lose situation. And even the decryption keys can be non-functional or partially, or just really too slow to actually decrypt all the ransomware. The Colonial Pipeline was reportedly paid for it. They tried to use the decrypt key and found that it wasn't any faster than them recovering from backups, right? So there's a lot of different things that executives have to weigh in these scenarios. Other impacts included, you know, businesses go down for an average of 16 days, and this was in Q2 2020. So there's not just a, hey, you're going to be paying a bunch, but your business is going to be down for an extended period of time. Any questions so far?
What is ransomware?
What do you mean, what is ransomware? I just explained it.
Oh,
Were you being funny or are you being serious?
I was being funny.
Okay. All right. So ransomware is a nasty thing. So why is ransomware so effective and prevalent? Again, it decrypts all the things, so it shuts down the business. We just talked about that, right? There's a business setback to this. Before they do that, they kind of recon for backups so they can try to. They realize that people, again, this is the cat and mouse game, right? And this is what, when the attackers get into your network, they're almost going to be better than a lot of your sysadmin and network people, in that they're going to try to find absolutely everything. And so they're going to try to find those backups, and they can, you know, encrypt those backups. Then you are more forced to pay, right? They will create their own local and domain accounts. They will disable antivirus and other security processes. So they really do a number on their work. It's a low risk, high reward type of attack compared to some other stuff, right? You know, the data is extremely valuable to the organization. This is why backups are important. And no backups means this is a potential life or death situation for the business, right? There are businesses that have had to choose between continuing to operate and pay, or just being gone, right? So what are they going to do? If they have the funds, they're going to pay. This means rapid monetization for the attackers, right? In other scenarios, data is exfiltrated and then a buyer is found. With ransomware, there's an immediate buyer-seller relationship set up, right? So you have that relationship established, and you don't have to find somebody else to actually pay for this stuff. This is where, you know, with credit card breaches or personal information or medical records, you have to go sell the stuff now on the dark web. With ransomware, you have the company, you have the buyer, and a lot of ransomware games, they justify this by, well, this is a pen test, right? We found something within your security posture that you need to go address, and here's the price to actually pay for this, right? So they're almost forcing their own, you know, it's extortion, but they're still forcing their own price tag.
Are they collecting
businesses.
bug bounties as well, or no?
Well, no, this is a big bug bounty, right? And this is the bug bounty, right? That's how they justify it, is that they're not going to go to Bugcrowd or HackerOne and get their little measly $1,000 or tens of thousands of dollars if they're really lucky, or hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're just going to be like, hey, we found a vulnerability and you owe us $5 million to get your stuff back. I mean, and there's a lot of effort that goes into the pricing too. They will research the company online. So they're not going to ask for $5 million from a company that's only making about $1 million. They will actually they will accommodate the price based on the business. And they're like, yeah, we know you kind of have this money and you can pay this, right?
Gotcha.
So that's why they're targeting. They'll target a certain, and they're targeting more and more companies, right? We'll talk about dark matter, I think, in a little bit, or remind me to talk about dark matter. But they've said they will attack any organization that makes over $100 million in revenue, which means that they can get a pretty significant payday out of it. Another reason why this is low risk, high reward is because cryptocurrency, right, is used for payment. That's a decentralized monetization method that makes it really hard to track. And even still, when it can be tracked, actors will often throw it into like these tumblers, which is essentially just money laundering. So you throw your Bitcoin or whatever into this money laundering or this tumbler service, and it spits out and gives you different cryptocurrency based on that, right? Which makes it a lot harder to track. Now, of course, the tumbler service gets a fee out of that. But that's another way that they're able to get away with this stuff. They're not asking for cash to be sent to, Russia or anywhere else. They're saying, no, use Bitcoin, and they can, and Bitcoin, with all of its up and down volatility, makes it a worthy investment. There's actually a side note thing here, right? Which is any company, companies are starting to, as part of their, business continuity plan, they invested in cryptocurrency. So Bitcoin has been in. So someone asked me about Bitcoin, and Bitcoin was in probably about 98% of ransomware attacks. There were some other sort of Bitcoin used, but Bitcoin was the primary one used. So if a company invested in that with the idea of, if we ever get ransomware, we can pay for it, guess who just made out? The company that invested in Bitcoin like 5-6 years ago has now actually gotten that fund up quite a bit.
Oh shit, that's a good call. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's worth more than it used to be.
Right, and that's nothing to do with the ransomware attack. It's just an interesting side effect of some of this stuff too, right? Because the attackers are going to keep the same price based on the company revenue, but if they invested in Bitcoin 5-6 years ago, they probably made a significant money out of that they could easily pay the ransomware, and they still have Bitcoin available.
So the company, let's say, invested 10 grand or 100 grand or whatever it is, the value's gone way up. So now they can be like, oh, well, they're requesting $1 million, but it only cost us that original 100 grand because the value has increased so much.
Right. To me, it's just an interesting side thing that the companies actually did. It nothing to do with any of the ransomware games, but it's always something that some of those outlier things that people don't think about.
I think it's, oh god, that's the most useful thing I've ever heard you can do with Bitcoin.
Yeah,
I mean, that's pretty ingenious. Whether they intended it or not, it's an unintended consequence.
Well, and if they never got hit by a ransomware attack, guess what? You've got a fat sack of cash sitting right there. You might want to get out before. You might want to get out before later in this presentation when we talk about the government starting to get into set policy for cryptocurrency.
Right.
Another reason is that a lot of these actors are outside of the U.S. I feel like we talked about this in the news section, where a lot of these actors, I mean, we'll just call it out, are in Russia, right? They have no extradition there. The biggest thing about Russia is that they're like, you can operate outside of our country, our borders. We don't give a shit. You start attacking Russian assets, that's when we care. So as long as they're not attacking Russian assets, they can operate and do whatever the heck they want, and they are not going to be extradited to the U.S. to face criminal charges. A lot of criminals that operate overseas, it's when they go on vacation and the government agencies, if they're high enough on the list, know about it, they'll do a bag and grab while they're on vacation, right? But which is also why they should not vacation to certain places either. And these guys usually know it. Unless they're just super cocky or they want to get caught, or I don't know, whatever. It seems pretty straightforward to me. Don't go to any of these countries. Don't go to Jamaica. You're just going to get bagged at some point. But if you watch the John Oliver skit, they were talking about guys owning Lamborghinis with like thief in Russian on their license plate, and they were doing donuts in the middle of like a busy intersection. Like they're just very, flaunty within the Russian government because they know they can't get extradited to the U.S.
That's pretty awesome.
Yep. The other reason why it's so prevalent, it's a business, right? So it's not just when we talk about ransomware gangs, it's not ransomware gangs. It's a group of people, and they've turned this into a business model, right? They've got malware writers who look for exploits. They do some discovery for there's let me step back. There's malware writers, right? These guys write malware. They write the actual ransomware malware. There's people that exploit, right? They actually exploit and get in and deploy the ransomware. And then there's people that do discovery, right? They get into an organization and then they stop. They sell the access to these exploiters, to these ransomware gangs. And, so it's a whole string of things, which makes it harder for law enforcement to pin this down because it's not one threat actor. It's people doing little pieces, right? This is the agile methodology. It's iterative pieces. It's little teams doing specific functions that then ransomware an entire organization. Banking Trojans are a favorite among malware distributors. So if you get a banking Trojan in your environment, that could be a foothold for ransomware gangs, right? There are 300 downloader campaigns, according to Proofpoint, that is distributing 6 million malicious messages, right? So like this is a big thing. But then there's also research and development, right? So they're looking for new 0 days, Kaseya, right? There's probably someone that found the O-Day. There's probably another group that exploited it, and then there was another group that actually, deployed the ransomware. Revil is essentially a platform. They are a ransomware as a service platform. They provide adaptable encryptors and decryptors. They have an infrastructure and service for negotiating communications. They have a leak site for publishing stolen data. And essentially all they do is they take a percentage of the payment, right? So again, that's where with the Colonial Pipeline, there was a difference in numbers, right? I think ultimately they said 5 million, but like, feel like the Department of Justice or somebody got like 2.3 or 3.3 million back. So they were tracking a certain percentage of one threat actor within an overall ransomware type of attack. They focus on attacking large organizations because the larger the organization they get into, the bigger the payout, right? The average payment for the first 6 months of 2021 was 2.25 million. Demand doubled after a deadline miss, right? So a lot of times they will put a timer on these ransomware notes saying you have so much time, and you go past it, the price increases. So this all goes back to a lot of the phishing stuff we talked about, where we're going to try to hijack your logical side of the brain and use a timer, and it's in red ink, it's in red font, and it's going to try to get you to perform some sort of action. Questions on that? All right. So how do attackers get in? Technology is a big one. I think with the Colonial Pipeline, they had a VPN network that someone had their password breach from another breach, and they reused the same password to get in to the Colonial Pipeline, right? The easy fix there is multi-factor, right? But then there's also password sprays that they'll do, brute force attacks. There's also unpatched switches, right? So if there's a unpatched switch with a vulnerability in it, like you can see that pretty much when you're checking out a switch, you can see what version it's on. And you can just go look for any kind of vulnerabilities with that switch and then try to exploit it for privilege escalation or, whatever. RDP is also a big attack too. So anything that you put out on the internet that has RDP access, they'll look for weak credentials. They'll try to brute force into it.
People still do that?
What?
They put machines on the internet with RDP?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Someone does.
Why?
Somewhere. I saw a stat today or no, I think it was the John Adler thing, right? Where they said, I think 80 or 85% of healthcare organizations don't have a security person on staff. There's where all your RDP is.
Hey, there's a brand new startup company that I just saw like 2 years ago come onto the ICS scene. Their product is essentially just RDP wrapped in IPsec.
Yep.
Which never.
It's like 50 grand.
I would actually
Jesus,
say,
you can do that natively.
Yeah, but it doesn't have a cool UI.
Adam, you and I need to talk about a startup. I feel like
do
at this
that
point,
shit natively. But the OS does it.
yeah, I feel like me, Adam. I started seeing consultants, and I'm like, I feel like I can do this. Just start my own company, be a
Oh,
consultant.
trust me, you can.
Yeah. I feel like RDP has become more of a thing too, with everybody being more remote and like opening up shit that they probably shouldn't, so that it's easier for them. So they don't have to connect to a VPN to,
Welcome to
RDP.
Microsoft Virtual Machines.
So the other way, and this goes old school. This goes back to me and Adam on Christmas Christmas 2012. Me 6 months into my job, and there was a 0 day in one of our third-party softwares for like a survey software on our website that allowed our website to be defaced. Right. So again, this goes all the way back to our vendor risk assessment.
Tim. I didn't have enough whiskey on the table for you to bring that up.
Very, very scarring, right? 6 months into my security career, I get called from Adam. Hey, have you seen our website? I go, no. It's Saturday night. Why am I looking at our website?
It's Saturday night.
I'm trying to play a video game with my daughter. Leave me alone.
It's the Saturday before Christmas, no less.
God dang it. We had 2 of those in a row. That's another story for another time. But yes, it was a third-party vendor software that 3 weeks later we get a notification from them. We have a 0 day that we fixed. It's like,
No
dang.
shit.
Thanks, guys. So again, software, big thing. As it's that was 9 years ago, 8.5 years ago, almost coming up on 9 years on that.
God.
And so software has become even more of a thing, by the way. So
Does
this
that
is
mean
where
I've been fucking this up for a decade?
this is where vendor risk assessments, right? And this is not just vendor risk assessments for paperwork, by the way, people. This is, you want someone technically that's going to actually and knows how to beat the crap out of this website and go, stupid. Yeah, it's a thing. I think it's going to become more of a thing. I mean, but that's how ransomware gangs get in, right? Luckily for us, it was just a defacement on a. It was really just, and it was more of a marketing site more than anything. It wasn't anything to our back end systems, but it could have been. So, inventory, people. Like, I don't know. Like, again, basics. Like, inventory. That's one of the basics. Understand what's out there. Colonial Pipeline. Hey, there's a VPN out there that hasn't been used in a while. Maybe we should shut that down. Or if it's still needed, put multi-factor on it. I mean, I don't know what to do with you.
One of my favorite games to play whenever I start a job at a new employer is to walk up to a random rack in the data center and point out a piece of equipment to who owns that. That game can continue for months sometimes.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, 11 months into employment, you can point to equipment. I don't know who owns that.
You're like 7 layers deep though in the ownership document on that though. Like you're talking about correlating a physical piece of hardware back to a business owner. Like, yeah, you're 7 layers removed.
Yeah, but it's one of those inventory management things where, yeah, the guy that installed that and managed it and maintained it died, and nobody knows how to get into it. We just leave it running.
Yeah. For the record, I'm not saying you shouldn't have that. I'm just saying.
So password guessing is another form. This is where brute force type of attacks come in, right? Oftentimes using compromised credentials, right? So this is where have I been pwned comes in. If you own a domain, I would highly recommend going to have I been pwned and setting alerting up so you can understand whenever someone's work email ends up in a breach. And I've seen some stupid breaches for work emails to be in, right? So make sure that you have and really you want to just go to that person and go, you're not reusing passwords, are you? Because if that's how people get in, right? Is they reuse the same password to get into other stuff, right? And so that's where you want to avoid. This is where security awareness training comes into your company. Please don't reuse your password. Have something unique for your work that you're not using for something that could be breached or such.
Everybody knows that, Tim.
No, they don't. Shut up. Social engineering, I think this is the pretty much standard at this point is phishing, right? Again, security awareness at your work about phishing emails. We do, we phish our company on a monthly basis. Every month we phish all 6,000 to 7,000 employees, right? And we pull emails from what we're seeing in our email filters because to us that's like practice, right? It's getting people to understand that clicking on links, and we have people that are really fearful of this stuff, but I mean it's better for us to practice than to get in a scenario where oh crap, like someone's clicked on something, installed something, and can get in. But anybody asks me what's the easiest way into organization, it's social engineering, and it can be phishing. It can be a phishing email. And it doesn't have to include a link. I've seen emails where it doesn't include a link. It's just getting someone to do something that's outside the norm.
I find it really funny when you're scheduling a pen test and they're like, but I want to take anything social engineering off the table. I'm like,
we don't do social engineering because one, we have a good social engineering program. The other thing too is that we know you can get in with social engineering. It's gonna happen, right?
That's why typically when you're doing a pen test, they'll elevate like, oh, okay, well, you can't get in, you can't breach our boundary. Okay, cool. Here, use these user credentials because we know that you could have gotten them through social engineering anyways.
Well, but that's not that's not a good reason to not do it though, right? That's part of the game. I mean, or any sort of phishing test or anything shouldn't be pass fail. It should be about how we get incrementally better, right? I mean, you're talking about raising the overall security awareness and security baseline of a user population. So
but that's what I'm saying is that like phishing, for me, we have our internal phishing program, so it's a waste of our because each pen test costs money, so it's a waste of our time to have our pen testers phish people because we know they're going to get in, right? So like Jessica said, we're going to give the credentials for them to get in and see what they can do.
You're talking about like pen testing in particular. Okay, not just like you're not talking about a social engineering engagement and not doing one of those. You're saying if you're having a pen tester come in, just gray box them, give them creds.
We do a network pen test. We know they're going to get in because I have the numbers from our phishing program saying that they're going to get in, right, at some level. And again, this is where multi-factor comes in, but they're checking all the external assets and so essentially we skip that because it takes time for them to create a fish and do all the other fish stuff. We know they're going to get in at some level. We've seen them do it before. Like the initial test was that they got in, But yeah, ultimately, we want them to see what happened. Like you said, they gray box it, right? They get credentials into the VPN. What can they do? Can they start creating accounts? Can they do all other stuff? How is our internal processes? Is the logging in place? Is catching up? Like I used to have within, because I knew when the pen test was coming, and like if they got something, I would walk into the SOC, and we had a red team versus blue team, and I would like put a red mark right next to the red team if the SOC didn't alert on it after a certain time period. And it was like, sorry, dudes, you guys sucked on this one. Of course, they would do the same thing. If they caught someone, they would give themselves a mark. But,
Are you still there?
Yep. All right. So how to avoid ransomware. And I loved, as I was watching the John Oliver thing, I love that he went into this, right? And he did a lot of the same things that I talked about here, right? Avoid clicking on links from unknown parties. I mean, this is pretty basic. So make sure that, even people that right? I said unknown parties, but unknown parties could be external. They could be people that, like, we've had issues where someone external that previously worked at the company, moved their contact list to their current work and emailed everybody out when their email got compromised, right? So even people that you might know, but is just out of the blue, that's something that you want to be concerned with. And a lot of the things I've talked about with ransomware attacks is emotional, right? Like the countdown timer. If you get an emotional email, and this is really hard to do, and this could just be something really good in general, is to take a step back, let the emotion kind of go, and then come back and see if it's actually something worth the time, or your logical brain will kind of step in and kind of identify, wait, this might actually be something bad that I really don't want to click on. And I will say too, going back to this too, marketing and salespeople are getting really shady with this. I don't know if anybody else has seen this, but I've gotten from marketing emails, hey, I sent you this email previously and you said you were interested, and let's connect on this.
That is the number one way to get me to never buy your product. That is the number one way.
Right. Well, I had one of our SOC colleagues recently go, because they get one of the things we notice from phishing emails is that they'll set up a bunch of rule changes for stuff. So they'll shoot out emails, but they'll set up rules for any responses for those emails to go to trash or go to junk, or just get deleted in general. And so we actually monitor for any kind of rule changes in Microsoft. And I actually set one of those up to go to, I have a vendors ignored. So any of those types of email, Corey, just go straight to my vendors ignored, because I know they're total garbage. It's like, I never reached out to you. I recognize when I reach out to certain people, I don't recognize this domain, and you're going straight to vendors ignored.
So, pro tip for everybody, I know just enough Spanish to get myself in trouble. And so I ended up on this list, and a vendor reached out to me in Spanish, and I basically said, sorry, don't speak Spanish, not interested. And then I got like 10 other emails in Spanish, and I was like, okay, what have I done? So, don't do that. Pro tip.
Yeah, don't respond.
That was a pro tip to not do that. Okay.
Yeah, don't respond.
Don't do that. Don't say that you don't know Spanish in Spanish and reply to it. Just don't reply.
Just don't reply. Send them to your vendors ignored list. I highly recommend the vendors ignored folder that you can rule out every vendor into that gives you unsolicited email, because your email's out there. Your work email's out there. I've seen it, and have I been pwned before? Avoid reusing, creating guessable passwords. Password manager is a big thing. I'm going to kind of breeze through this because, this is, I think for everybody here, this is a group that recognizes multi-factor authentication wherever you can. go to have it been pwned, set up, notifications. Adam, not correct. He's saying have it been pwned will let you register to receive notifications for your email domain. You have to post a token to DNS to demonstrate ownership. That is not correct. All you need to have is either security, webmaster, or some other email address, and that verifies you as the domain owner for that. Do you want to respond with a baby in your hand?
Really?
Yeah, you don't. You just need like one of.
That.
Yeah, you need like one of 3 email addresses. That may have been early on, but like now you just need one of 3 for that domain. Because I've set it up for a bunch of our acquisitions, and I just had people create. Okay, so for example, we recently acquired Care Here. I said, give me a security at carehere.com domain that's alias to our security inbox. So it's still, anybody that emails that still goes back to our original alias. And I just set it up to have it been pwned. So now I have that set up and have it been pwned. It's super easy, barely an inconvenience. Got all sorts of kids on here. My kids came and waved. It must be close to bedtime because they're all getting on camera, so they don't have to go to bed.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. Again, report anything suspicious. As I mentioned, security at domain. Report that. And then, of course, good backups and test your backups, right?
Test your backups.
Test your backups to make sure that they actually work properly. And then I have a note here. Mackenzie is going to insert his viewpoint, his little backup test. Ha, 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 ha.
Uh-oh.
You're muted.
Thanks, Director Corey.
Mackenzie's talking to somebody. Or he's muted and he thinks he's talking to us.
Directator. It's not director.
He might be working. Is someone in the room?
Mackenzie, who is it?
Mackenzie, wave 3 times if you're in trouble.
Yeah, continue scratching your head with your middle finger if someone is in the background.
I think Mackenzie's working, so we'll have to skip that. We'll see if we can get him at the end.
My children are really enjoying Adam's show. You're not as funny, Tim, so I'm going to need you to pick it up a little bit.
Yeah, do we need to change focus to Adam here? Hang on, let me.
All I have is memes. They're not into the meme.
I can fix this.
I have found that 8th graders don't like even some of the funny memes I have up. So another interesting thing that Krebs came up with was install the Russian language pack on your keyboard, because apparently there's certain malware that won't install on your computer if you have the Russian language pack on your keyboard. So that could be a decent defense in depth strategy.
That's a few years old, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's more recent for me, but yeah, it's probably been a while, but it's good to bring it back up.
You just have to have it installed. You don't have to use it. Like, I don't want to learn.
Yeah,
Russian.
you don't even have. Yeah, you don't have to use it. Just to have it installed, because it's all it checks for is Russian malware, or is his Russian malware pack installed? Is Russian language pack installed on keyboard? Because they don't want to mess with the Russian government, right?
Yeah, right. So, again, Russian intelligence.
Yeah,
working for Russian intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Do not install. The government is getting more involved in ransomware issues, right? I totally see cryptocurrency getting more regulation, starting to curb some of this stuff, and then people. This is probably what's going to move people away from ransomware, right? Is that they can't get paid because cryptocurrency starts getting more tied to individuals. Biden has discussed with Putin harboring ransomware creators and crews. The Justice Department is pushing for legislation requiring companies to report ransomware attacks. The new EU there's new proposed EU legislation to ban anonymous cryptocurrency wallets and transfers. That's pretty huge. And the U.S. Treasury Department, they will support implementing money laundering requirements. which means they're working towards virtual currency standards. And then the TSA pushes more mandates on critical pipeline owners, right?
It's also my understanding that there's certain companies are struggling to find people that'll actually continue to offer them cyber insurance, even if they've held a policy for years upon years. There's cases of it not getting renewed now.
Yep. So yeah, that insurance drives a lot of that. So there's a lot of government things and other things moving that it's a hot topic right now, which is probably good because it means that we're going to continue. Like, this is the cat and mouse game. The cat's going to get the mouse's tail, and it's going to stop this type of attack, but then they're going to pivot to something else. So, job security for security professionals, but it is state of mind, essentially. Mackenzie, are you back?
Yes, I am.
All right. You have a backup story here that I had to skip because you had your headphones off.
Okay. You want me to jump into it? Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So the backup story is if you are working for an organization and you want to test your backups, but you can't really get your management or to get buy-in for your backups, like a cute little workaround / cheeky way in order to do that is to get a standard text document and save it to your desktop, maybe a shared drive, the SharePoint, and anywhere else that you might harbor files that you want to back up, depending on whether your company like backup C drives or anything like that, and leave it for about a week because that's usually like the longest cycle for backups a company might do, and then after that, encrypt it and ask if any of your help desk or system admins can restore the file back to its original. You might have to lie to them and tell them it's an important file and they definitely need to restore it, but tell them it's corrupted or encrypted or something like that, and they will. If they fail to do it, that means your entire organization is susceptible to ransomware. So
that doesn't bring me good confidence. Thanks, buddy.
Wait, why? If they fail, why does that mean?
So you're essentially just performing the encryption act yourself instead of a ransomware actor, and what you're doing is you're performing that malicious action, and then you're trying to get your help desk to restore your files to the original date. If they can't restore your files, it means that your backups aren't either they're not backing up, they're not being tested, or it's probably one of those two.
Oh, okay. So you're making an assumption here that your help desk or whatever party that you're asking to do this has access to your good backups.
Well, it could be via the help desk that it goes back to like the server group, and then if they're backing up properly.
I was about to say that ticket would have boomeranged right back around to my group. Is where that would have gone. But yeah. I got you. Yeah.
Not all organizations have help desks. Not all organizations have server groups. Sometimes it's
okay. That just threw me off a little bit. Okay.
That would have came back with, "Hey, security, can you unblock this file?"
That is a like take home. You can go do this right now at your company, and it probably won't piss that many people off. And
but it will if they can't recover it, and you'd be like,
if they can't recover it, you are haha. But it is a non-intrusive way to test your IT team or security team if you're a manager or if you're a lower level employee, or you just want to check your coworkers to make sure that their game is good.
I recently did an audit at a data center, and their backups were extremely secure. So we couldn't get access to their backups that were 10 years old because we didn't have a tape drive on site to be able to read them.
Just putting that story together, and it took the turn that I thought it was going to take. So,
she's very pleased with that, by the way.
Yeah, backups that are 10 years old. I have questions about the validity of the data.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah.
It blew my mind that, and I, the question was like, do you even have any reason to believe that these are encrypted? And the answer was no. And I'm like, then why are they sitting here? Like on a desk in open office area, backups of your sensitive data should be fine. No, just leave it out. It's good. It's good.
The real question is 10 years ago the last time those backups were taken?
No, it was not.
If those backups are 10 years old and they're actually 10 years old, aren't they more of a liability than anything?
Bingo.
Data retention policies, which is our next talk for next month.
We should have deleted all that shit like 5 years ago.
Some organizations are under a mandate to keep their data for 30 years. All right.
That's absolutely accurate. This particular data was not under such a mandate.
Yeah, but they also have requirements for not sitting out in public cubes.
Or if your salespeople promise your customers that you'll keep your data for, I don't know, something like forever,
in perpetuity throughout the universe.
Yes.
I don't know of any organizations that would ever promise that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Does it walk
Look,
yet?
we can't all agree because then people will start putting it together which company it is, okay? Not that company exists anymore, I don't think.
We should probably stop talking because at some point I have no idea what company you're talking about, Corey.
Did anybody sign an NDA? I didn't sign an NDA.
I didn't sign a damn thing.
So now we just go to LinkedIn and look what Jessica, Corey, and Adam all worked out in the same place. So
there he goes.
Goodbye.
All right. Any questions? If not, we're done. Before 3 hours. This is not the Verizon data breach investigation report.
Thank God.
All right.
Hey.
I have a question.
42.
Should you pay the ransom?
Mackenzie,
that's not within scope of discussion of this presentation.
It depends. We're gonna need more context. Like, is your first question? Is your organization ransomware right now?
Yes.
Yes.
No. Wait. No.
We cannot legally give you any advice. We are not your lawyer. We are not your doctor. We are not your cybersecurity professional.
Yet.
Is this a life or death situation for your company?
Wait a minute. I want that on a shirt. We're not your cybersecurity professional.
But here's the question: life or death situation for the company, or life and death situation for employees somehow?
Which that has never been a scenario ever in the existence of outside of healthcare.
Untrue.
Well,
healthcare where a hospital got ransomware and they had to reroute an ambulance to another facility that the person didn't make it. There's no guarantee that the person would have made it at the current facility either. So,
and that's really what I'm driving at is there's a life of the company is an intangible
it's the
thing.
life of the company.
But I still think that there's situations, and they're extremely limited, where someone would be in danger or physically.
The U.S. is going to come after you if you pay certain ransomware gangs.
I mean, let's chase the money, right? So if you have a cost, if you can figure out a cost on the cost of recovery, people hours, whatever it is, or hardware that you have to buy, and then whatever your fine's going to be, if that's more than what they're charging for the decryption key, pay them. I mean, from a business standpoint, purely money. I mean,
and that's what it turns into, right? Is a business decision, right? Is it worth it to pay it versus the time it's going to take to decrypt and
plus downtime for recovery?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 16 average business days. Are you willing to be down for 60 while you muddle about trying to decide?
It's the same argument that was probably had by the business whenever you said, hey, we need to spend $50,000 to secure XYZ. And they went, too much money. Can't do that. It's the same decision they made there. It's just
that decision is passed. It's the current decision. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I get you. Yeah. We get to wear the I told you so shirt.
But at that point, it turns super interesting because when they were doing the calculation on how much they should spend on something like that, shouldn't they also do that calculation to say,
Well,
where's our line? Like
that's
how much will we pay?
that's where the business continuity comes into play. That's where the companies that invested in Bitcoin to account for this scenario probably made bank after like buying into Bitcoin 5-6 years ago. Yeah, it's all things like ransomware attacks is a scenario that should be on every company's disaster recovery business continuity plan at this point. It's not, but it should be.
So pontificating here, kind of, thinking about this. So, I feel like the conversation has turned almost completely to recovery when you talk about ransomware, right? Like I feel like the first thing that everybody goes to is, oh yeah, your backups. And I feel like there's multiple layers, like, prevention is a thing. And, there's obviously we can talk all day about prevention versus, just recovery and that sort of thing. But I feel like everybody maybe in the business side has gotten really focused on, well, it doesn't matter if all these other controls fail. We've got good backups, right? And I don't know. That narrative scares me, right or wrong. I don't know, but I don't know.
Yeah, but you have to actually be checking your back.
Well, that's what I was just. That's what I was just gonna say. Is like, so it's fantastic. You say we have good backups, but how many people actually do any type of testing of backups? Period. B, do a full backup and restore for a test. It's a completely different thing to be like, oh, I can back up, I can restore one system. Can you restore all of it? I haven't met anyone, any company, anywhere that does like any type of scale, like to scale backup even.
I would argue it's still not a big enough issue to where people take it that seriously.
The company that my father works for on Wall Street, they do a 1 day a year or 1 week a year where they restore their entire company to an alternate site, and they move all the employees to the secondary site and all their systems, so they make sure that they're like hot failovers work and all that stuff. And it's a it's like the I forget what they call it. They call it the Cantor Fitzgerald backup plan. And they do an entire week of work a year at their alternate hot site that's outside the city.
That's impressive, to be honest, in my book. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, that's the exception, really cool. Not the norm.
Yeah. So totally not on topic, but see this right here. It's a skin for my laptop. It's black wood, and it looks so incredible on this thing.
How do you get it onto the laptop?
It's a sticker. So that's the back. It's literally sticky. But this was the mouse pad cover, but because I keep clicking up and down and futzing with the corner, it finally came off.
Yeah, so it was a sticker.
I mean, there's still sticker on the rest of it. See? You can only see the edge. But right there.
Yeah, you ruined it.
So pretty. Shut up, David.
You're going to need a new Surface Book.
So funny you say that.
Oh, God.
David, come on, man. You know the keywords not to say.
Did we stop the recording, or is that still going?
We're still live. I'm still live on YouTube.
Just wanted to ask real quick.
I mean, who cares at this point?
So,
Do you see how it's shiny? There's still cellophane on it?
Jessica's ransomware plan is just to buy new Microsoft Surfaces constantly. That way it doesn't matter. So
funny story. They're having it. Their press announcement is scheduled, whatever, for early October, and probably the next version of the Surface devices will come out. Ryan has accepted his fate and said, "Well, how much are we going to pay?" And I was like, "Yes, I like this answer."
Is there ransomware yet that's diving into the cloud and encrypting files in the cloud? It's got to be a thing, right? Have I just not heard about that? Because I know it does on-prem. I know it'll crawl. It'll crawl file shares. Duh, that's an obvious thing. But is it reaching into cloud services yet? Like if you've got the desktop app installed, can it? I guess it couldn't.
Yes, it does. Any directory that it can follow, it will do. And we found Microsoft OneNote and Google Drive to be hit by ransomware.
Yeah, so you'd have to have the app syncing the files, doing the two-way sync thing on your local machine, right?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if it was like reaching in via the web service. I guess if you got the app installed, you got two-way sync installed, don't you? So I guess that's kind of inherent there.
And restoring from Microsoft is very, very slow. OneNote is very slow to restore through APIs and PowerShell. If you have a lot of data that's out there, it's a very, 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 very slow process.
You actually just, yeah. Go ahead, Mackenzie.
We did a SANS class at Dragos, and we all used our company laptops, and we downloaded the 64 gigabyte virtual machine folders onto our desktop, and we all forgot that we had OneDrive syncing on for backups, and it like loaded multiple terabytes of virtual machines because we had like the zipped folder and the unzipped version with all the virtual machines, and we loaded like 30 copies of this into our OneDrive. So just got to think about these kind of things.
I mean, are you preventing ransomware by adding the extracted unzipped files, or
no? It was just the fact that we loaded like 5 terabytes into our OneNote.
It's probably
It's like mistakenly, and that's just a meme because it probably costs us extra money in hosting costs.
It's probably one of those things though that like if they turned it off to exclude that file extension, it'd be the one time ever an executive was using that as like a template for, hey, I heard it was secure if I logged in on a VM on my computer and it's like locally hosted.
Well, what actually happened was our IT staff called or posted in the Slack channel like, hey, are you guys like at a SANS class? And we were like, oh yeah. It was like the morning of the first day. And we were like, oh yeah. And then like you can just use like the OneNote widget at the bottom of your taskbar to exclude files from the OneNote sync. Or you could create a folder that's excluded from the OneNote sync. So we just created a desktop folder that was excluded and then dropped everything in there. And then it auto-deleted everything out of OneNote. And obviously it never finished the sync because, as Jeff said, OneNote is notoriously slow on the sync files. So the like the 200 gigabytes that everyone had to sync was going to take like 24 hours.
Okay. Well, David, MC, Tim, I don't know if you've got more. I don't want the conversation to go stale either, though. Okay.
You can cut the stream and we can just chill.
Cut the stream.
Ransomware and chill.